Welcome back. This is part two about talking about the Bruins, kind of dissecting the team a bit, projected defense and goaltending for this upcoming season. We're going to start off talking about the defense. First line, we got Hampus Lindholm, age 31, paired with Charlie McAvoy, age 27. Again, take this with a grain of salt. It's August 10th. These lines are off Puckpedia. This is pretty much the top six defensive core you're going to get in addition to the goaltending. But you may see changes throughout. You may see low ride play up and down the lineup. You may see peak play above Yoki Haru. We'll see. Injuries will happen too. There'll be more guys. We'll talk about those other guys in the next video about the players not mentioned here and the prospects. So, Hampus Lindholm, 31 years old, signed at $6.5 million for 5 more seasons. Take him till he's 36. Last year, 17 games played, 3 goals, 4 assists for 7 points. He was very good when he played. He's shown a lot of improvement since coming over from Anaheim in that decision-making and that defensive positioning. It's encouraging. The offensive side of his game is still there. Is it elite? No, but is he more than capable of producing offense? Yes, which is nice. So solid 200-foot, two-way defenseman. Top pairing guy. It's good. On to Charlie McAvoy. You kind of know what to expect with McAvoy. He's 27 years of age. $9.5 million is his cap hit for 5 more seasons, and that includes this upcoming year for all these guys. 50 games played last year, 7 goals, 16 assists for 23 points. McAvoy's a guy, again, you know what to expect. His offense, he's not going to break the charts with his offensive numbers and stats and play. Sometimes some of his decision-making in the offensive zone is questionable, and sometimes it works out pretty well and can turn into highlight reels, right? We've had a couple highlight reels from McAvoy this past season. He also got hurt at 4 Nations, so thus the 50 games played. You want to see more game. You want to see these players be healthy for an entire season and play together. 2 years ago, I had some issues with these two guys playing together because their chemistry was awful. It wasn't good. We saw some of that progress as that season went on. Last year, to start the beginning of the season, their chemistry seemed to have been a lot better and much improved. So I'm hoping to see that carry over into this year. Again, both of these players were injured last year. They didn't spend a lot of time together. I'm hoping that chemistry carries over into this year, because if so, this is an excellent top pairing defensive unit. If there's minimal or no miscues, that is absolutely ideal. And this pair could go against some of the best in the entire NHL. There's not many I would put in front of these two guys as a top pairing unit. Devon Taves and Cale Makar kind of stick out as one that would probably be better, but in general, I think this is an excellent top pair defensive unit. Getting into the second line, we got Nikita Zadorov paired with Henri Yoki Haru. Zadorov is 30 years old, signed at $5 million for 5 more seasons, so that'll take him till he's 35. 81 games played last year, 4 goals, 18 assists, 22 points. Zadorov is a polarizing player in almost every aspect of the game, whether you're looking at hits, whether you're looking at defensive ability, whether you're looking at offensive ability, whether you're looking at penalty minutes. I will say that penalty minutes, we'll start with that. Penalty minutes throughout the first half of the season, they weren't good. He took a lot of minor penalties that kind of put his team in a tough scenario. And this is a guy that plays on the penalty kill, plays valuable minutes on the penalty kill. So it was tough. At the same time, he also has his penalty minutes aren't indicative necessarily of his discipline per se. I think for the first half of the season it was, and he really cleaned that up in the second half. But he was one of 2 guys that would really just drop the gloves, and Zadorov was more or less a leader in sticking up for his teammates. It was Zadorov and Kaslik who were the 2 guys that would drop the gloves last year. So there's a lot of leadership on the ice that has been displayed by Zadorov, which is very nice to see. You want to continue to see those minor penalty minutes cleaned up throughout the year. We saw that happen. We want to see that continue to happen throughout this upcoming season. His defensive play, his analytics aren't great. right? But his actual defensive play, if he's committed to playing defense, is pretty solid. So this is a player you can't necessarily go by the analytics on. It's one of those things where some players have analytics that line up with their play very well, and some players do not. And Zadorov not necessarily is one of those guys that it lines up well with. It depends, though. This statement holds true for both Zadorov and Jokiharju. Neither player has necessarily adjusted all that well to this new system that's implemented essentially league-wide, where you activate a defensive player into the offensive zone to generate some more offense. Again, almost every team plays this, and a lot of players have either struggled to adapt or just have not adapted at all. Both of these guys are examples of that. Zadorov had a good offensive season in Vancouver. A lot of that was indicative of his defensive partner and the system he was playing in with his forwards playing defense and so on. So Zadorov, his offensive skills are there. He's fine offensively. He's good defensively, but he's not very good at doing both at the same time. There has to be balance. We'll see what the new coach Marco Sturm expects from both Zadorov and Jokiharju in terms of that defenseman activation. So I'm curious to see how that goes. But overall, I think Zadorov's an excellent second pairing defensive guy at this time. And yeah, we'll see what this upcoming season brings. Again, everything I just said about that defensive activation applies for Jokiharju. This is a guy I've been watching for years now. He's 26 years old. He was very good defensively in Buffalo, and then they started to install that defenseman activation system. Expect some of these guys to drive into the offensive zone. That puts more pressure on the defenseman that is staying back and not generating offense to essentially stop the rush and provide better, more stable defense, or you're defending with forwards as opposed to a defenseman. But Jokiharju also isn't an offensive guy. His offensive skills aren't there, and that's okay. This is a guy that needs to play defense and really be deployed as a defensive defenseman. More of a finesse defenseman, but he's very good at it. And it's just about how you utilize your players, right? And I think Zadorov and Jokiharju are excellent players if they're utilized appropriately. So we'll see. Last year with Boston, Jokiharju played 18 games, only had 4 assists. Last year with Buffalo, he played 42 games, 3 goals, 3 assists for 6 points. Overall, pretty solid. This is a guy that should be a second pairing defensive player. But if you're expecting him to play offense in any sense of the word, he's going to be a liability. So you need to define his role, and if it's defense and not worrying about offense, he's a solid second pairing defenseman. And a right-handed shot at $3 million on your second unit is pretty solid. So we'll see what happens there, right? There's a lot of question marks, but I think for the most part, this is an excellent top 4. And we're diving into the bottom pair. Again, bottom pair for this video. This may change throughout the summer and this upcoming season. Mason Lohrei, though, 24 years old. He's a young offensive defenseman. Just signed a bridge deal, $3.2 million for 2 seasons. 77 games played last year, 5 goals, 28 assists for 33 points. Excuse me. Lohrei is excellent in the offensive zone. His offensive skills and anticipation, and even things like passing and finding that open ice it's absolutely exceptional. There's no denying that. I make it a point to watch defensemen play where they are throughout their entire shift, every shift they take, because I don't think the stats and analytics are necessarily indicative of how well some of these guys play and so on. But Lohrei, you don't even have to watch him every shift, right? You just see what he does when he has the puck in the offensive zone, and it's impressive. There's no doubting his offensive skills are off the charts, fantastic. That's a big reason why he is in an NHL. He's in an NHL locker room, right? Great offensive skills there. There's also a guy that's 6'5" and 220 pounds. Seems to have a good personality. Seems to fit well in the locker room. I can't speak to how well he fits in the locker room and all that. From general appearances, it looks positive, which is always good. He needs to work on his defense, though. That's his liability. He's a defensive liability, which he's a young, offensively minded defenseman. It often takes these guys throughout the league coming into the NHL a few years to really play serviceable defense and learn that serviceable side of the defensive game. But he has the tools, right? He's a big body. He needs to throw a few more hits. He takes hits, and that's great. And he takes them really with seemingly no problem. It'd be nice if he used his body a little more for positioning, for throwing hits, getting forwards off of the puck a little more in the defensive zone. There's also questions about his positioning, a lot of positioning. I think that could fix a lot of that. There's questions about some of the decision making he has in his own zone, which is different because his decision making in the offensive zone is excellent. And just little things, tying up sticks in front of the net, things like that will go a long way with Lohrei. A lot of that stuff he doesn't do, or if he tries it, he doesn't do it well. And that's okay. This is not a team that's projected to be a Stanley Cup contender, right? This is a guy that is a young offensive defenseman. This isn't abnormal, and that's no shade to Lohrei by any means. It's a process, and there's developing to do, and that's okay. I think if he shows the commitment, he can get to that point. It's about showing the commitment that is yet to be seen. I don't know. It wasn't super apparent to me last year if he was or wasn't showing the commitment. I'm not a coach. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not on the bench. I'm not seeing what goes on behind the scenes. But, for example, and I hate to give any Canadiens player credit because I hate the Canadiens. I hate them. I'm a Bruins fan. Go Boston. But Lane Hudson came into the league, offensive defenseman. His defense was atrocious last year, right? But since game one, showed that commitment to learning the defensive side of the game and trying to be in the right position, trying to tie up sticks, and he wasn't always successful, but he grew so much defensively throughout last season to a point where it's serviceable. There's question marks, sure. He's still a lot of developing to do, right? I've heard arguments from both sides about how he's really great now defensively and how he still has a ton of work to do, and I'm kind of in the middle ground. I don't think he's great. I think he's serviceable for an offensive defenseman, right? But that's kind of where you want Lohrei to be and kind of that path you want him to take. You want him to make that effort, maybe sacrifice a little bit of offense to really focus in and learn that defense for a year. It's a good year for him to do that. The team isn't going to be great. That's okay. You have plenty of veterans around you to learn from, solid veterans to learn from, and you have a 2-year contract. You take this year, you learn about the defensive side of the game, you learn how to play defense at a better, more elite level than you are, right? Because I probably still couldn't score on Lohrei even if I tried right now. Not gonna lie, so no shade, but then the following season when he's in a contract year, I believe he might still be a restricted free agent. I don't know. I don't have it up in front of me. You can really show what you're made of. You provide serviceable defense, and you pop off offensively because those skills are there. There's no question about that. But what's holding him back from really staying a top pairing defenseman or even in the top 4 at times is his defensive play. If he works on that, he's moving up the lineups. When you're moving up the lineup, you're getting more ice time. When you're getting more ice time, you're probably going to have more offensive production and points to supplement that, which looks good on your next contract. So that's kind of where we are with Lohrei. A lot of potential there. Love the kid. I wasn't expecting him to be as good as he was when he came up from Providence. So it's great. And next up is Andrew Peeke. Peeke is 27, $2.75 million cap hit for this 1 year. He's eligible for an extension. Last year, 76 games played, 1 goal, 16 assists, 17 points. Peeke is an interesting guy. Last year, he had to play some games in that top four, a bunch of games in that top four. He's one of those guys that his offense and his offensive instincts aren't great, and that's okay. But he's also one of those guys where you have to manage his minutes. If he's getting too much ice time, he's going to make mistakes. You're going to see the deficiencies in his game. And we saw that a lot last year. We also saw that in Columbus. There were times where he was averaging well over 20 minutes of ice time in Columbus, and it wasn't working out well. If you keep him on the third unit, you give him 16 and a half minutes of ice time per game. He's a very good third pairing defensive defenseman. I think at this point that's all you can really expect from Peak, but he'll do it well. He can play physical. There's a lot of positives to his game, but if you start overplaying him, a lot of those mistakes really start to be amplified and be more prominent. So overall, I'd say this is a pretty good defensive core. I hate giving Don Sweeney credit, and it hurts me so much to give him a compliment. But former defenseman, he's done a pretty good job building up this defensive core. It's a very good defensive core. There are also guys in the system that may play a prominent part in the future. So it hurts my soul to say that Don Sweeney didn't suck, but here we are. Anyway, I got to stop talking about that. Goaltending should be a little quicker. Jeremy Swayman, 26 years old. This is going to be year 2 of his $8.25 million extension. It's good for 7 more years, including this upcoming season. Last year, he played 58 games, 3.11 goals against, and an .892 save percentage. On the surface, those numbers are not great. Let's kind of dive into this a bit, though. The year before, he played 44 games. He had a .916 save percentage, which I think Philip Gustafson in Minnesota had that this year, and he was 6th in Vezina voting. And Swayman's goals against last year were 2.5 something, 2.54 something. So there's that, right? It's a big drop off. I think part of that is attributed to his contract dispute. I don't want to call it a holdout because we're not talking about that. We're just not going to talk about that right now. I could do a video on that separately if you want, but there wasn't that ramp up to NHL speed and NHL play. Swayman had to do that during regular season games, and it took a bit, 10, 12 games. He wasn't good. He just wasn't. And it was apparent that he needed to ramp up to that NHL speed again. Once he got to that point, though, he was actually pretty solid. He was a solid goaltender. He was pretty reliable in that. And just like any goaltender, there are always times, no matter how good they're playing, soft goals do go in. We saw a bunch from Connor Hellebuck this past season. He won the Vezina. He won the Hart Trophy. He was fantastic. Just an example, there's always little things you can point to with a goaltender, like, oh, well, he let goals like this in, and yeah, but every goaltender does type thing. But I'd say once he got ramped up to NHL speed, he was Jeremy Swayman from last season. He was playing very well. He was making very difficult saves that weren't necessarily highlight reel. A lot of deflection saves he made last year, which was really impressive. Those don't show up in the analytical stats from what I'm aware of. They might, but it's extremely unclear. And I think a lot of defensive or a lot of goaltender stats are super indicative of how your team plays in front of you. This team was beat up last year. They weren't good. There were a lot of questions, especially in the defensive side of the game. And goaltenders almost always suffer as a result, both in regular stats and analytical stats as well. I did a little video, it's a long video, but it's about expected goals, and that's just one of the stats that doesn't tell you if the defense in front of them was even serviceable, right? So Swayman, I'm not worried about him. I know he gets a lot of hate. I might get some hate for saying this. I'm not worried about Swayman. I don't think he was bad for the most part last year. I think he'll be fine this year. I'm not expecting a year like this again to happen to him. If it does, you can come at me. It's okay, because it's fair. But I think Swayman will be just fine. There's also a thing with Swayman. Really, since he was called up, it was Swayman and Vladar were the tandem in net because they had goaltending injuries. And Swayman is one of those guys where if the team in front of him gives up, he's also going to give up at some point pretty soon. We saw that a bunch of times this year as well. Even when he was having very, very good games, they could be losing 3-0, and those 3 goals scored against were really not at the fault of Swayman per se, right? But you could see the team come out for the third period and really just give zero effort in front of him. And a few minutes into the third period, after you see every guy take a shift or two, he also begins to give up, which part of it is understandable. If your team isn't even giving you a shot to come back in a game, what's the point? Why are you going to bust your butt when nobody else is? But then at the same time, you also want your goaltender to kind of be that spark plug at times and get your team going. Make a couple of great saves, get the team going. And if that doesn't work, then that's a coaching thing, man. And I think a lot of that was from coaching. And this goes back to Jim Montgomery as well. I don't think Sacco or Montgomery were bad coaches by any means, so this isn't any shame to them. But I think part of it is you can tell when a team's really down and just giving up, and you don't want that to happen. You want the team to finish strong or show some type of fight, and there's a whole bunch to that. But we didn't see that rebound or that timeout or talks on the bench or whatever happened throughout the game. So there were times where it was tough to watch, for sure. We're moving on to Korpisalo, though. Korpisalo, 31 years of age, signed at a cap hit of $3 million for 3 more years. 27 games played last year, 2.9 goals against, .893 save percentage. Korpisalo, I thought, had a pretty solid bounce back year from previous years. I think a lot of that is reduction in games played. I think he could be a pretty solid backup in the league. At the same time, his stats are very similar to Swayman's. The defensive core in front of them was not good last year. That's okay. Is it going to be good this year? It'll be better, but you should have guys working on their development this year as well. So both of these guys should have stats that bounce back quite a bit, assuming Korpisalo doesn't get traded. I think he asked for a trade. I'm not sure if he's going to get one. But I'm not really worried about the goaltending tandem at this point, to be perfectly honest. I think there's a lot of improvements for this upcoming season that weren't there last year, mostly due to injury, but some due to development. I think Lowry hopefully is a little better defensively. That should help a little bit with the numbers, right? Just a little bit, maybe a percentage or two on the save percentage, right? So that's that. And their third goaltender, at this point, it's Michael DiPietro. He's 26 years old, same age as Swayman, by the way, which is crazy. Both still pretty young for goaltenders. DiPietro signed at $812,500 for 2 seasons. In Providence last year, played 40 games, 2.05 goals against, and a .927 save percentage. On the surface, those stats are outstanding. He also had a good season last year with Providence as well. I don't have much insight to Providence or the systems they played or how good the defense was or any of that extra stuff. So I always take those numbers with a grain of salt. But those are, even if your team is playing exceptionally well in front of you, those are excellent stats. The Bruins have not signed a de facto veteran number 3 they can call up that'll pass or clear through waivers. Michael DiPietro seems to be that guy. So if an injury happens to Korpisalo or Swayman, we could see DiPietro play. So that's kind of exciting. He did play a few years ago in Vancouver. That didn't go well. He's had some development time in the AHL. He's been very good in the AHL. We'll see what happens. But that's kind of where we're at. So this is part 2. there's a lot of players that will see ice time this year that have not been featured yet in the forward groups or this defensive goaltender groups. I don't know if we'll see any other goaltenders aside from DiPietro, assuming both goaltenders don't go down and the Bruins don't sign a free agent or whatever. But there's a ton of players to still get to. This is just part 2 of 3. So thank you. Appreciate you. Take care, all right?